Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Today I'm talking about the inspired homeschool, and we're going to talk about education as an atmosphere and a discipline and a life. Mindy's going to be sharing some notes in here, and we also have Kristen, who's going to be sharing some of our resources as we're talking. And I I'm going to give away one of the inspired homeschool books. And so I'll let Kristen randomly pick a winner from the chat towards the end. So feel free to put your questions in there. And then at the end, we'll randomly pick a winner out of the chat to get a signed copy of the Inspired Homeschool. Towards the end, I'll also have a few coupon codes and one other really special giveaway to share with you. And so feel free to just stay tuned, because I know sometimes when we're taking care of kids, it's easy to like wander in and out, but I'd love for you to get all the goodness that we have for you today. And so stay tuned in the chat. Keep commenting, because we're going to be picking a random winner out of the chat to receive one signed copy of the Inspired Homeschool book, but we have some others coming up as well. I've got my screen. I'm going to get to the right screen here. So today we're talking about the inspired homeschool, how history's heroes light the path to confident homeschooling. And the title is also joyful, but I forgot to put that on the slide. So, um, so would you guys like to have more joy in your homeschooling? How many of you put it in the chat? There was a lot of tears in the last homeschool year. So today we're talking about the inspired homeschool, and I want to help you cultivate an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. This was a saying from Charlotte Mason. And she said, education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about how to cultivate that in our home. And when we do that, our home becomes one of the teachers. The habits of our home become one of the teachers. And then we lay this feast for our children. And so it makes homeschooling so much more simple and joyful when we work on this concept of education as an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. So I'm going to be talking for a little while. Then I'll look at the chat and maybe we'll answer some questions. And then towards the end, we'll announce that giveaway winner, and I'll announce the coupon codes and the other things that I have for you today. So
Okay.
whether you've been homeschooling, and don't forget, as you come in, to go ahead and mute yourself. It's easy to just like come in. I know, and we're like taking care of the family, but if you can just mute yourself as you come in, because we want you to be able to take care of your babies and do all the stuff that you need to do in the background. This is really sweet. Maybe we should just pause for a minute and listen to this little cutie pie. Um, okay, so we're going to go ahead and keep going. So mute yourself as you come in. And I love hearing kiddos learning in the background. That's amazing. Okay, so whether you've been homeschooling for a little while or you're a brand new homeschooler, how many of you have felt like, oh, this is a big experiment, and what if it doesn't work, and my parents aren't even proud of me for doing this, and what are people saying? And I would like to say to you, when people say like, I don't know about you homeschooling, you can just say to them, well, what would Jesus do? Because according to my research, Jesus was homeschooled. And homeschooling is not a new experiment. It's actually how people were educated up until really public schooling wasn't a thing until maybe 100 years ago. It's a pretty new phenomenon. And so what we're doing is not a new experience. What we're doing is historically the way people were educated. And as we look at homeschoolers from history, we can see that they were educated in many different ways. Like some of you are thinking, okay, I will homeschool, but I need to find out what the best way is and do this best way. And I would say that's the Charlotte Mason method. But really, in my new book, The Inspired Homeschool, we look at 10 different people and actually a pretty wide variety of ways that people were homeschooled, which should be really reassuring for all of us, that no matter where you are in the journey, if you're just getting started, you've been at this a little while, you're you're an unschooler, you're classical, you're Charlotte Mason, you're a mix of it all, you're probably going to do a great job. Because when we look at these 10 people in my new book, The Inspired Homeschool, you can see they were homeschooled in a lot of different ways. Some of them were more like unschooled. Some of them had really caring, intentional adults. But there was a lot of different ways that people in history have been educated at home and still had wonderful results. So we're going to talk about that today. What I especially want you to know, though, is you don't have to copy somebody else's homeschool. You don't need to copy the public school. You can cultivate the atmosphere and habits and life that God has placed on your heart in your family and give yourself a really good homeschool experience. So today we're talking about education as an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. And when you can get that foundation down, it's going to make it so much easier to do a really good job with the homeschooling, because so much of the education is your home. It is the habits of your home. And then there's the actual stuff that you teach your children. And so when you get this sort of coalescence together, it's going to ease up your homeschooling and create such a much more fun, enjoyable experience for you. But before we begin, I just want to know, how many of you have a clear homeschool vision and plan? Kim John Payne, in his book, Simplicity Parenting, he says, nothing happens unless first a dream. And there's another saying that says, begin with the end in mind. So this is the first chapter of my book, The Inspired Homeschool. And it's actually the first habit that we work on in the Restoration Home community. So we're going to have a special offer to help you develop that vision toward the end of the call. But I just want to share with you some principles to help you define what is important from this motto, education as an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life. But as I start talking, just kind of think about that. Like, do you have a vision for your homeschool? Do you know what matters to you? Because the homeschooling is not about copying a system. It's about creating a life-giving environment where children can grow. And so today we're going to explore 3 different people. These are all people I've included in my book, The Inspired Homeschool, whose homes cultivated this principle, and then how you can apply the principle in your own homeschool. So the first one is Laura Ingalls Wilder. How many of you who are watching this did the Playful Pioneers at some point in your homeschool, or you're looking forward to it? Because in the Playful Pioneers, we work through reading the Little House on the Prairie books, and then we do notebooking and look at art and do projects that are all based on those stories. And so, when we look at this concept of education as an atmosphere, we're talking about the atmosphere of our home. And you can see how Laura Ingalls Wilder was shaped by her home if you've read those books. Her family didn't have a lot financially, but her mother worked to create a place that was lovely and orderly and a safe place to learn. And Laura learned alongside her. Laura learned practical skills in her home that helped her to nurture her own home, but also it helped her nurture these skills of observation and order that helped her write those books that have inspired millions. So, and the atmosphere isn't just about what your home contains. It's also about the relationships in your home. Charlotte Mason says, every look of gentleness and tone of reverence, every word of kindness and act of help passes into the thought environment, the very atmosphere which the child breathes. He does not think of these things, and he may never think of them, but all his life they excite an appetite towards something out of which most of his actions spring. And so the courtesy and kindness, the love that you share in your family home becomes part of the atmosphere. This is one of the big skills that we actually work on in the Restoration Home community, is looking our children in the eyes. It is hugging our children. In July, we're actually working on a habit of greeting dad when he comes home, so that we create this atmosphere of kindness and courtesy and love and respect that passes into our children. So part of forming that atmosphere is learning to nurture connection with your children, but also peace in your own heart, your own relationships. In June, in the Restoration Home community, we studied Simplicity Parenting by Kim John Payne. And he talks about how parents' anxiety will nurture anxiety in their children. Parents who are stressed will create an atmosphere of stress for children. But a mother who has learned to be peaceful, who has learned to attune with God, who has learned to be quiet with their own thoughts, will be able to nurture a quiet and peaceful home. So you might just think for a moment, pause and think for a moment. How am I contributing to the atmosphere of home by my way of being? Am I generally a peaceful person or am I generally anxious? You might think, how am I showing up for the people in my home? Am I looking my kids in the eyes? Am I giving hugs? Am I a warm and friendly presence? Or am I kind of on edge all the time and making excuses for my behavior? It's a good thing to think about as we think about our home as an atmosphere. But we also want to think about the physical atmosphere of our home because so often we set out to create a homeschool environment and we actually overdo it. We spend too much money on stuff. We fill up our toy bins. We, overdo it with the homeschool curriculum we buy. And there's just so much stuff that there is no time to be bored, to explore the world around you. Most of your time as a homeschool mom is taken up with organizing. You could think about that for a minute and maybe even write a note like, am I spending most of my time in my family life organizing the stuff in our home, or are we spending more time as a family connecting with each other? So sometimes it takes help. It's helpful to just look at what you have and say, do we have enough or a little bit too much? Kim John Payne says, simplification is not about taking things away. It's about making room, creating space in your life, your intentions, and your heart. So let's look at how Laura learned in her home. She learned through the books that were read aloud, through Pa's fiddle playing. She learned through Pa and Ma's wise advice. She learned through playing with siblings. And she learned through a lot of practical life skills. So we build skills in our children by including them in the daily life of the home. As your children grow, we give them a chore chart or checklist. We give them skills by organizing our home for independence. So for instance, having the homeschool supplies in a basket they can reach, having art supplies organized so that your child could make an art project but also clean up after themselves. We build those practical life skills by actually creating a rhythm for your home life. And we have a free life skills checklist. You can point your phone at this QR code or maybe just take a picture of it and look it up later. We have a free life skills checklist that might help you start thinking about that. But we include those in the Peaceful Preschool and Nourishing Nature Kindergarten and in all of our elementary resources. We include practical life skills because your child learning how to pick up after themselves, how to clean a bathroom. That's one of our habits we're working on in July in the Restoration Home community. All of these skills will help your child develop their motor skills they need for academics, but also makes your home one of the teachers. It makes your home an easier place to learn. And think right now about this list with Laura Ingalls Wilder. Like, she was mostly homeschooled. She occasionally had a few years or a year or so in school, and then she became a teacher when she was 16. But there were a lot of things happening in the home that taught her, she had to describe the life for her daughter or her sister who was blind. She helped her mom, and her mom was always giving her wise advice about life. Like, make up your mind that life's going to be hard, and then the happier you'll be once you make up your mind to that. Or, talking with her dad about the meaning of liberty. So think about your home right now. What ways are your children learning through your home? Is it that you love to garden, and so your children are out there in the garden identifying plants with you? Is it that you are an avid artist and your children are watching you make art and maybe they're playing with art themselves? Is it that your family has a rock climbing hobby or a music hobby and your children are learning alongside? Think of all the interests that you have, maybe even write down some of those interests, and just think about all the ways that your children are naturally learning in your home. Because this is all part of it. Education is an atmosphere. Your home is a teacher. And so we don't have to feel like, oh my gosh, we have to schedule every minute of the day, because if we're not doing hands-on learning, like if it's not a curriculum and a subject and a workbook in front of our children, they're not learning. Think about what they do that already is learning. Also, I recommend taking some time over the summer to actually look at the ways that your children are learning on their own. Like maybe you're on a summer break and you notice that your kids are doing a lot of Lego building. Maybe you're on a summer break and you're noticing that your children are spending a lot of time reading their favorite stories and talking about them. Maybe they're making dollhouse miniatures. There's so many different ways that our children are learning. They're developing their motor skills, their curiosity. They're, maybe looking at stars or coming up with new recipes. Make a list of all the ways that your children are learning in your home, because I think that can take some pressure off. Like when we see, oh yeah, my children are learning all the time. Like it's not just when I'm directly teaching them. There's so many ways that my kids are developing skills, they're developing interests, and they're learning even when I'm not teaching. This can take some pressure off when the school year starts and help you see, wow, my children are learning. It's not always my direct teaching. But before we go on to the next principle, think for a minute what mental or physical decluttering needs to happen to make your home a peaceful place to learn. Maybe you're noticing, yeah, actually, my kids are having a hard time settling down to play because there's so many toys, they just get overwhelmed. Or we're spending a lot of time this summer organizing the toys, and maybe it's time just pack some up and see if anybody misses them. Or maybe you notice that you just went through a really hard season and you're grieving something and you need to take time to really go, schedule a mommy and Jesus date where you go do some journaling with the Lord. Maybe you need to even visit with a counselor or a pastor or a trusted mentor to just talk out some of the stuff that's weighing you down, because often mental or physical clutter can detract from our peaceful homes. In the Restoration Home community, we talk a lot about dealing with unrest and learning how to overcome feelings of shame or inadequacy and learn to believe the best about ourselves. We actually have a daily journal that has a list of affirmations in it, because often when we've had some hardships in our lives, we can start to identify ourselves by our mistakes. We maybe had a season of postpartum depression. Now we've identified ourselves as just like a lackluster mom, or maybe we've had a child who went through some behavior issues and we've sort of identified ourselves as being inadequate and incapable of parenting. But those are not true in light of Scripture. What Scripture says is we have everything we need for life and godliness, and God has given us what we need. And he who began a good work is faithful to complete it. And so in the Restoration Home Daily Journal, we actually have affirmations that sometimes we need to just start speaking life to ourselves and telling ourselves what is true so we can start overcoming that declutter. So we can be a present, excited learner, because your children are going to have the same attitude about learning that you do. And so if you're afraid, if you're scared, if you're anxious, it's going to make them feel that. But if you're like, we can learn, look at all we've learned already. We are excited people who love to learn new things. We have natural curiosity. We have what it takes to learn. Like when that's your attitude, that's going to be your children's attitude too. And that's a big part of education as an atmosphere. The next thing I want to talk about is the power of habits. When Charlotte Mason says education is an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life, when she's referring to discipline, she's talking about the discipline of habits. And I love this quote from Benjamin Franklin. He said, "Who is strong? He that can conquer his bad habits." And all of us have habits, whether we get up in the morning and read the Bible or listen to an audio Bible, or we get up in the morning and scroll on our phones, whether we, take a walk with our children or just sit in front of the television. There are so many different habits that we have, but are they habits that are contributing to that vision? Are they habits that are helping create that peaceful home atmosphere? Benjamin Franklin, he didn't have a lot of gifts in life in many ways. He had less than 2 years of education. He had a difficult apprenticeship. His brother was beating him while he was apprenticed to him. He had, limited advantages, but he developed curiosity and discipline and daily practices. And because of those daily practices, he became an inventor, a writer, a scientist, and a statesman. And, I know that through some of my own daily practices, like writing a book could never have happened if I hadn't developed a discipline of getting up in the morning and doing the basic chores and teaching my children how to make breakfast and get themselves ready for the day. Like some of the things that I taught my children, some of the habits we developed are those same habits that gave me space in my life and in my schedule to do bigger things myself. And so in your own family life, what habits are you guys developing? We had a daily schedule. So in the morning, I'd get up, we'd have a routine of Bible reading and personal care and room care. And I'd kind of have like a little motto that I would sing out. I'd be like, make your bed, brush your teeth, clean your room, read your Bible. And I would sort of sing that out in the hour or so before it was time for us to start our morning time. And then around 9 a.m., we would have our daily morning time where I would read from the Bible and literature and history and science and notebooking and art and map work. That was the feast that I spread. Then we'd have an hour for math and an hour for language arts, so that by lunchtime, most of our formal schooling was done for the day. And then we just had another habit block in the evening where we'd read aloud and do some evening prep work. And those daily habits help me raise children who can then manage their own lives. They can go to work or go to school or, manage their homes or manage, being a husband and a provider for a family. So think about like, what are your daily habits? It's helpful to just have some keystone habits. What's your morning routine right now? Do you have a daily read aloud routine? That's one of the most powerful things you can do to educate your children, is just to have a daily read aloud routine. Do you have daily nature time? Do you have a daily chore routine? Is there regular times for exercise and family meals and journaling, creative work? We have a chore and routine path that can be helpful. You might just start with teaching your children a couple habits at a time, and the same for yourself. In the Restoration Home Daily Journal that I mentioned earlier, there's space for writing just a couple habits. And in the Restoration Home community, we work on just 3 habits a month, because sometimes what happens is we get started with new habits and we get really excited about it. And then when we have, somebody gets sick or somebody doesn't sleep at night, and so you sleep in a little bit, and we start feeling this big shame spiral when we've tried to do too much too fast. But when we can just start slow, we focus heavily in the Restoration Home community on 1% improvement, on just making those small daily forward movements towards a more peaceful life, towards that vision that we've developed together. And so maybe write down a quick note. What are the 3 habits you're going to focus on? What do you want your morning routine to be? And what do you want your evening to end with? And, developing that kind of peaceful routine for mornings and evenings so that you have those anchors are a good place to start. And then the next part of that education as an atmosphere, a discipline, and a life is this principle of feeding your children on beautiful ideas. When Charlotte Mason said education is life, she's talking about how life is built on ideas, and they chiefly come through books that we read out loud to our children. So there's a lot of ways that we're teaching our children when we're homeschooling. Some of you might be using a formal curriculum. Some of you might be using textbooks. But with the Peaceful Press, we actually teach mostly through literature, because living books or literature are very easy for our children to remember. When you look at someone like Elizabeth Gooch, who was homeschooled in a home that was surrounded by scripture, stories, nature, conversation, and beauty, she was given the gift of an imagination. She was given the gift of virtue. She was given the gift of a life of intentionality. And so she's written so many books that really highlight this beauty. We actually studied one of her books in May. I think we studied The Bird and the Tree. And there were so many insights in there on marriage and on creating a legacy and on doing the hard work that it takes to create a legacy. And Elizabeth was able to convey these beautiful, big ideas with just such wonderful, whimsical writing because of the ideas that were fed into her. And in our homeschools, we have a choice. Like we can either give our children an education based on what we care about and what makes us come alive, and on beautiful stories and on virtuous quotes, or we can give our children education on like some basic facts. But facts are not going to shape a child's soul. I love this quote by John Ruskin. It's one of my favorite homeschool quotes. He says, "The true end of education is not only to make the young learned, but to make them love learning, not only to make them industrious, but to make them love industry, not only to make them virtuous, but to make them love virtue, not only to make them just, but to make them hunger and thirst after justice." And that's such a powerful quote to look at. What is it that we want to teach our children? Because so often we get down in the weeds. We're like, they're not reading yet, so I need to get more reading phonics books in here. And they're not up to what are the state standards for history, and we need to make sure we're following the state standards. And we miss out on all the beauty that we could be conveying to our children through stories, through literature. Our tastes, the tastes of your children, are going to be trained to love what is good and hate what is evil based on the information you raise your children on. So, I talk about this a lot more in depth in the Inspired Homeschool book, because I think it's really important to look at, like, often in regular schools, they are teaching from sort of a victim narrative, sort of silly stories, often not a lot of hope in these stories. But when we read books like The Little Britches, where a boy goes through severe hardships throughout his life and yet always comes out on the other side with hope and with a victorious worldview. When we read stories like Little House on the Prairie, where, they lose their home several times and yet they continue loving each other and working diligently together. Or reading stories like The Chronicles of Narnia, where the family continues working, or, where like in each book in that series, there's highlighted goodness and beauty and truth. And it's written in ways that really grab our children's hearts and make them want to learn more. And when you read these kinds of books, like, we read even biographies like Shackleton's Endurance, or a biography of some of the great artists or great explorers. When we read books like this, our children will want to know more about where that happened. They'll want to know more geography, or they'll want to know more about when that happened. They'll want to know what other things were happening. When my son and I read the book Unbroken together about Louis Zamperini, it sparked a whole slew of interest. We looked up some of the battles in the Pacific Theater. We read Louis Zamperini's biography. We listened to speeches by him. He spoke at the one of the Billy Graham Crusades. And so listening to that book, reading that book, sparked all kinds of other interests. But if we just read a little bit of text about the Japanese internment camps or the World War II, it wouldn't have sparked any kind of interest. And how many of you can relate to this from your own education, where the things that really stuck with you were the stories that you read, and the stories you read shaped a worldview? We live in a time where it's really easy to get the answers to a question. We can look it up, we can Google it, we can ask chat. There's so many ways that we can get the factual answer to a question. We still need a fact check. That's true. But what we can't easily do is convey virtue to our children, convey a worldview to our children, inspire our children to love what is good and hate what is evil. But we do that, and we do that really well through beautiful stories. And that's what the Peaceful Press curriculum is based on. That's what I'm hoping to point out to you in the Inspired Homeschool book, is that we can learn, and learn really well, through a simple rhythm of reading stories to our children and then creating an atmosphere and a discipline. So think about this. What beautiful ideas are you planting in your children? There's a QR code here on this slide that gives you access to a Peaceful Press webpage that shows you where to start. Like, I know sometimes when you're starting out with literature-based learning, you're like, do I start with The Playful Pioneers of the Precious People? Or do I start with Nourishing Nature Kindergarten? Where do I start? Because it is family-centered, which means you don't have to buy a separate curriculum for every child. You can buy one family resource and apply it to the whole family, and just add grade-specific math and maybe some phonics in the early years, some spelling in the middle years, and then writing, grammar, composition grades 4 to 8. So at that link, you can find sort of like a start here guide. If you have a first grader as your oldest child, maybe start with the Precious People World Geography. If you're starting with a multitude of grade levels, many people start with the Playful Pioneers. It's one of our best-selling resources. And then, of course, if you're starting with a younger child, just start with the Peaceful Preschool and go through the whole 8 years of resources. So I just want to mention sort of the daily inspired homeschool formula. If you do these things consistently, read aloud, talk and write about ideas, practice some math, your children will have the foundation to keep learning for life. And in the Inspired Homeschool book, I'm going to lay that out for you. I talk about the how to teach the beauty subjects, how to teach history, how to teach science, and each subject is paired with one of these beautiful stories. Like Blaise Pascal, he is the one who came up with Pascal's wager, where you ask, if you choose God, you lose nothing. If you choose God and you're wrong, you lose nothing. But if you don't choose God and you're wrong, you lose everything if God is true. So I didn't say that right, but Pascal was such an incredible thinker, and he was homeschooled by his dad. Berta Morisot was an incredible artist. She was homeschooled by her parents. Leonardo da Vinci was homeschooled on the family farm and was one of the best artists in the world. So there are so many people in history who were homeschooled and created a beautiful world for us to enjoy and created beautiful ideas, beautiful art and music. And that's what you're going to learn about in the Inspired Homeschool, is just how to create a beautiful homeschool experience with your children that is not high pressure, that is not miserable, that doesn't make you guys feel afraid and cry. Because when you are feeling fearful, anxious, miserable in your homeschool, your kids pick up on that and it actually shuts down learning. Learning happens best when there's an atmosphere of confidence and joy and peace. And the other thing I want to mention is the Restoration Home community. I know some of you would love to create a homeschool that's shaped by vision and connection. And this is where we do this. In the Restoration Home community, it's a place for moms who want to move beyond simply getting through the homeschool day and begin building a home culture that reflects what matters to you. In the Restoration Home community, we've been practicing habits for several years now, and we're seeing real progress. Like, moms are experiencing more peace in their family life. They're experiencing more hope. They're experiencing just a life-giving family culture that they didn't expect they could have. It's not actually out of reach for you, no matter where you are. This mom said, habits have been helping me work through unrest. Journaling every day has been a challenging habit, but I saw results and made important realizations and heard a lot from God. The room care has required intention, but last night all of her children decided to fold all their clothes nicely. Another mom experienced more breakthrough with their consistency. She said the reward of consistency is beyond belief sometimes. Another mom said, these habits have changed so much in my whole household in just 1 week, especially leaving her cell phone upstairs until morning time and most school is done. So it's a supportive community. When you join the Restoration Home community, we're diving into a 6-week experience where we're going to help you plan a flourishing homeschool year. We'll help you clarify your family vision. We'll help you work through some of the unrest and develop stronger emotional health. We're going to develop habits and rhythms together and create anchors of joy. So we're going through a really intentional, personalized coaching program in our new member group. And when you join, you can scan that QR code or go to restorationhomecommunity.com and save 10% with code restoration. And then the first 20 people who join the Restoration Home community, I'm going to send you a signed copy of my new book, The Inspired Homeschool. So the first 20 people who go and sign up for the Restoration Home community, you're going to have a signed copy of the Inspired Homeschool book hit your mailbox, because that's the book we're studying in July. So every week in July, I'll be sharing a video in the community, about teaching the different subjects and developing a vision so that together we can really have a revolutionary homeschool year. It could be a homeschool year where there was, like this mom said, family vision, peaceful rhythms, and deeper connection that leads to restoration in your home. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll take some time for questions. I'd love to look at the chat and just if there's anything that you are like, okay, I want to develop this more peaceful homeschool life, but I'm not sure how, or I've had this experience with my children. We're working on this. And one of the things that we actually just did, I think would be really powerful for you moms who are maybe in a season of struggle, being on the struggle bus, is this, the book club we did last night. We just did the Simplicity Parenting Book Club, and that's in the community right now. You can watch, or it'll be posted this week. And so that one is going to be a really good resource for you, just listening to how to simplify the clothes. Often our children are just getting too many choices. There's too many options. And that's part of what's creating the chaos in your family life or the intensity in your family life. So, and right now we just have an annual option because we're diving into a new system of really helping families launch. We've had in the past, we've had families join on a monthly membership and then they don't really get to use the resources. There's not the investment that helps inspire, like, okay, I'm going to actually work through the steps and get the forward movement in my family. And I can guarantee you that the habits that you build in this 6 weeks is going to save you a lot of money on maybe homeschool purchases that you don't need, purchasing things because of unrest that you maybe don't need. And so the purchase, $200 minus the 20% off is going to help you in your home, in your homeschool, create a more peaceful family culture that is going to save you money in the long term. I'm just going to look at some of these comments. Oh, I love this. Lakin says that her kids love to tell people how they are able to do things around the house, and they have a affirmation. We are well capable kids. What a beautiful culture you're developing when you're creating an affirmation like that in your children's lives. I love what Mindy says. Oh, Erin. Mindy says the quality of friendships with other moms from my years in Restoration Home community is unmatched. And then we have Erin Beasley. I'm going to be speaking at her church parenting conference in Hawaii in November. Would love to have some of you come to that. And so, of course, we're all super good friends in the Restoration Home community. We're creating anchors of joy. So many good comments. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the brand new ones, just see if there's any other questions. If you have a question, you're free right now to unmute yourself and ask questions or ask them in the chat. So Erin says that her kitchen's gutted right now and being remodeled, but her home still feels peaceful because of the Restoration Home habit. So Bonnie, we meet 2 times a month on Zoom. So we have one meeting where we gather together and talk about our book for the month. And then we also have another meeting where we have mentor mom share. So we've had, and these are all available. When you join, you get access to the whole library of content. We've had one of our mentor moms, Justina, shared about homesteading. Beth Ann, another one of our mentors, shared about static meal planning. Tia and Mindy just shared about overcoming chaos in our homes. We have Aubrey and Marina are going to be sharing in a few months on raising teens. So I see this question from Sky talking about teens and older children. There's definitely older homeschoolers in the community. We also have in-person meetings 4 times a year. There's regional groups that you can access. We have monthly mentor mom calls. There's a book club meeting. There's a retreat. So I see some of the moms are putting some of the things that you get when you join. One of the things that really helps families as they join is the weekly lesson plan. So every week this year, we're working through developing virtue. How many of you feel like, my children, like we're kind of behind a little bit in the process of developing virtue as a family or developing some of these character qualities. And each week we send out a weekly lesson that really helps highlight those virtues. So we the weekly lessons have like a habit that we're working on that week. It has a poem. It has a uh, and actually maybe Kristen, you could just drop a lesson in the chat so people could see the lesson. So there's a weekly lesson that has a YouTube linked story, an activity to do with the younger children, the older children, connections. There are these habits that we're working on, and then we have habit tracking. So this is one of the really powerful things that we do is that as we're working on the habits, we submit our points every week. And then at the end of the month, we put them in a document and we choose winners. And so, we're very much about 1% improvement in the Restoration Home community. We're not trying to be perfect here. We know that we're all on a journey. And so it's okay to come in at whatever stage you are in motherhood. But as we do these little habits kind of tracking together, it's creating momentum. We had one mom, Sierra, she shared last night that they've been doing these decluttering habits. And one of the things she recognized as she was working through the decluttering habit is that she was actually creating a lot of clutter by talking too much and giving too many choices. Sometimes we're not even aware of some of these things until somebody else starts talking about it. So she was giving too many choices. And then what was happening is it was creating some anxiety in her home, and she started decluttering the noise, and her daughter started feeling so much more at rest and so much more relaxed as she worked through the month on decluttering noise. And so this is part of the power of being in the Restoration Home community, is that when you see other moms have a testimony, when you see a mom who, is creating a more peaceful life with her family, when you see a mom who is joining together and moving beyond just simply getting through the day and building a home culture, then you're like, wait, we can do it too. When you see a mom who is maybe figuring out the mealtime madness, like Mindy's one of our mentor moms, and she's been a pediatric dietitian. And so she has some really great advice for those mealtime problems. Beth Ann is one of the parent coaches, and she has had to do occupational therapy with some of her kids. And so she has some really good tips for those wiggly learners or those children who are really struggling to attune or attend to their homeschool. So there are so many different talented intentional moms in there. Tia is one of the mentor moms who's in here today. She just recently wrote a book about parenting the littles, and that's going to be one of the swag items at the retreat. So there are so many resources and so much wisdom cumulatively in the community. Another one of the things that we talk about often is learning how to take care of our physical bodies as we're homeschooling. So often the things that are creating sort of anxiousness and stress are also just maybe we're overscheduled, maybe we're not eating well. And so learning how to kind of simplify some of that. And we have this whole Restoration Home community spreadsheet of recommendations that's there available for you to see, okay, this mom is using this vacuum or this mattress or this vitamin, and you can sort of crowdsource resources for those things as well. So I'm just going to check and see if there's any questions. I really want to be able to answer, if you're in the community and you're wanting to learn with us, we'd love to help you. So once again, if you are one of the first 20 people to join, we'll send you a signed copy of the new book, The Inspired Homeschool. And we'd love to be there to support you. And we have regional meetups like all the time. We're adding more. But if you are a Northern California family, I am having a book launch party at my house July 17th. I'd love to have you come to that. And then we're going to be I'll be in Kansas City in September for the Flourish Seasons event. So that's going to be so much fun. And then we have a retreat in October. And we have, there's 2 conferences I'm going to be speaking at in Southern California this summer. And then, like I said, a parenting conference in Hawaii. So I think you guys should all come to that. So I'll just wait a couple minutes. If you want to ask a question, you can ask in the chat or you can unmute yourself, and we'll give it a few more minutes just for any questions. If you're a Restoration Home Community member, and Aaron, if you have a link for that, feel free to put that in there too. So if you join the community, oh, good question. Okay, if you join the community, if you're one of the first 20 people to join the community, I will send you the book for free. So if you're one of the first 20 people to sign up, I will send you the book for free. So we're keeping track of when people sign up. And so if you're one of the first 20 people, we'll send you a signed copy of the book for free. Everybody who's in the community and purchases the book, you're going to get early access to it. So we're studying the Inspired Homeschool during the month of July. And so if you purchase the book and send your purchase receipt to community at the Restoration Home Community or community at thepeacefulpress.com, then we will be sending you the digital copy early so that you can go ahead and start reading, because we're going to be talking about it all throughout the month. So the book ships for most people July 14th, but if you're one of the first people here today to join, I'll send you a signed copy tomorrow. But if you, if you're in the community and you've already purchased it, you can just send us your receipt and then we'll send you the digital copy early. So I'm going to go ahead and answer this question from Rosalinda, and then maybe Mindy, you can copy that and repost it so I don't have to try and find it. So Rosalinda said, I'm struggling with how to slow myself down during school time. I'm very task oriented, so I feel like I rush my child through the subjects. Okay, that's such a good question, because when we're rushing, how do we feel? And when we're rushing, how do our children feel? And I think sometimes it does take slowing down and just noticing what's happening around us so that we are actually present with our children and attuned to what they're feeling. And so I think always pull back until you can do things with peace. If you're having to rush to get through it, I remember how I felt, on a day where maybe we had co-op in the afternoon. I really wanted to get through all the lessons in the morning. I remember that how I started to feel was agitated. And then what often came out was yelling at my kids, which then ruined any bit of learning that we had, because it not only put me in a shame spiral where I'd have to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have yelled at you guys. Co-op was not that important. Please forgive me. And so then you go into co-op and you're trying to teach a lesson, but you're feeling so embarrassed about yourself as a mom. So just peel it back, always peel it back to whatever you can do with peace. And, especially when you read scripture, you see how Jesus was like, he was moving slowly and making time for children. And he said, suffer the little children to come unto me. And your children are not going to be behind. I'm going to probably say this on every single podcast I do this summer. John Taylor Gatto, a New York State Teacher of the Year, said, all the learning your children need for success in high school can be taught in only 2 or 3 years of formal skill study. So don't feel scared in those early years before age 10 about where your kids are at, or that you have to rush through all the subjects. Like, just think about, you want your children to be good communicators. So read a lot and talk a lot. And as they grow, have them copy a lot. You want your children to know how to compute. So do some math every day. You want your children to have a good vocabulary and a beautiful worldview. Read aloud and talk about the books. Like, you don't have to get through a whole grade level of homeschool materials. And some homeschool materials are overkill. Like, I know a lot of families love doing the good and the beautiful. And for some families, it's a perfect fit. But for some of you, it is going to be overkill. And so even though it's inexpensive and it's good and beautiful, it might be overkill for your family, and you'd be better off just reading some stories and doing a page and explode the code with those young children. So just peel it back to what can be done with peace. And then establishing evening routine. I think that's very personal to each family. For me, I love going to bed with a clean kitchen. It's so gross to wake up to a dirty sink full of dishes. I love going to bed with a clean face and clean teeth. And I love going to bed with children who have been read to and prayed for. And for us with 7 children, it wasn't individual. We would have a family evening read aloud time. Maybe on a really busy day, it would just be reading a psalm and praying together. Maybe on a really, really busy day, it'd just be saying the Lord's Prayer together. But having some kind of a family attunement moment before they go to bed is a really, really precious. And I think our evening routine is going to reflect our values, you know. So if your highest value is raising your children for the Lord, then you'll incorporate something towards that end in your evening routine. But I think start small. If the only thing you can do at night is a family prayer time and brushing teeth, then make that your evening routine. And then Samantha's asking, love these questions. Keep them coming. She's asking, what grades fit for the Playful Pioneers Volume 1? Kristen says 1st through 6th and can be extended. Absolutely. So, you know, if you look at even, for instance, some of the classical conversations, middle and high school book lists, some of the books that we read in elementary are on those lists, because you can, you know, extend what happens when you're doing family style learning is you will read a chapter out of The Little House on the Prairie, and an older child will write a detailed notebook page or a detailed narration, and a younger child might just copy the word or copy the sentence that we include in that weekly lesson or that daily lesson. And so you don't have to sweat about like, oh, how can I do this one curriculum with both my younger and older children? The older children are going to take their own rabbit trails. They're going to do more detailed map work. They're going to do more detailed timeline cards. And the younger ones are going to do it at a more basic level. But the beautiful thing is that everybody's learning together, and it gives you a lot to talk about as a family and helps cultivate that beautiful family culture. Megan says, do you have any resources for mindfully planning a homeschool year? Kristen posted the homeschool planner in here. Our printed one on Amazon is the number one education planner. It has 1,800 reviews, so it's been used by lots of families and loved. We also have a digital homeschool planner, but also if you go to inspiredhomeschoolbook.com, there's a free homeschool planning workshop, but we're going to be watching one of those planning workshops in the Restoration Home community. So when you join the Restoration Home community, that's how we're starting, is with this mindful planning week, where as you're entering in and before we start our Restoration Home content, we're going to be working through a couple weeks of just helping you plan your homeschool and develop that vision and really be mindful and intentional about a homeschool plan, and really even giving you some of that curriculum resourcing, because we don't have to overdo it. You're better off starting simply and adding things. If you find that your children get through all the schoolwork and then they're not really engaged with learning on their own, because a child who is a normal, curious child, once they have finished, you know, the hour of morning time, the hour of math, the hour of language arts, and I'm not saying that they're sitting for an hour, I'm saying that that's the time that you're allotting for those subjects. Once they finish that, they're going to want to maybe go draw their own thing. I would find my daughters in the afternoons in their kind of quiet personal time, they'd be reading or journaling or drawing or working on a quilt or sewing something. My boys would be out building a fort or, playing with the baby goats or building something or hammering out some jewelry. Like, everybody was doing something useful. And if they are, then you don't need to add stuff. You don't need to over clutter their life. And that's one of the things I really want to point out in the Inspired Homeschool book. So many of these people who really made a difference in culture had a lot of free time. They were given time by their parents to explore their own interests, to observe the world around them. And it wasn't free time to just consume and sit on a device. It was time with mentors or time, practicing their art or practicing their skill. And then Jay says, any suggestions for being consistent in routines of their daily life? So Kristen posted this routine checklist. It's such a great checklist. And I know starting in a RV full time, that can be really intense. We lived in a travel trailer for 6 months. But one of the beautiful things about being in a travel trailer is that it does really simplify the routines down. Like, there's not as much to take care of. And so it's a great time for your family to, you definitely can read out loud every day. Like, your children, you've got them captured in a small space. Like, there's not a lot of place for them to run off to. It's a great time to start maybe learning to play board games together. Like, sitting down and playing a math board game is just as quality math instruction in the early years as doing a math worksheet, maybe even better in many cases. And so I love that question about how to start those basic habits. And so just write down, like, start with the very first habit. For many of us, that very first habit is going to be just making our bed every day. For some of us, it's going to just be reading our vision every day, having time where we review our vision, where we just do that one first starter habit, reading out loud. And we're going to give you some suggestions of those starter habits in the Restoration Home community so we can really help you make forward progress towards your vision. Jessica says, my kids are great with read aloud. How can I motivate them to read on their own? And so I'm so proud of you, Jessica, that you developed the read aloud habit. It's unfortunate that we are ruining our attention span with phones, and it's harder and harder for us as moms to read aloud to our children. So good for you. You are winning. But then to motivate them to read on their own, I think often it's just finding the right book for them. Like, I have one who was more of a reluctant reader, and it did take, like, here, try this book, try this book, try this book, until we finally hit on the book that really engaged them. For some of my kids, the first book that engaged them was The Littles. I don't know if any of you have read any of The Littles. They're pretty simple. They're, not too hard of words. And for many of my kids, that was their first chapter book. Nate the Great was another chapter book series. There was lots of them, and they weren't too hard to read. When my kids were just starting reading on their own, we actually read books like the Bob books, or I know there's Dash Into Reading now, or the Tabitha Page books. So simple books like that, where they can start getting a repertoire of sight words that they know. Because for a child who's a slow phonics learner, it can be kind of hard to to get over that hump where they have enough sight words they can read fast. And so even sometimes drilling sight words might be helpful to get over that hump. So T is answering the question about the regional meetups, and most are for families with kids. Okay. And then Bonnie, you don't need a separate language arts curriculum. So this is, Mindy had a great answer here, but for my recommendation for language arts is that if your child is still learning phonics, so say you start with the Precious People World Geography and your child is still learning phonics, you could add an Explode the Code workbook, and that's it. So maybe your child is, they're a pretty good reader. You want to work on some spelling. So then maybe you'll just add like all about spelling resource, or a spelling power, or just a simple spelling resource. And then most Charlotte Mason families start grammar in like 4th grade. But if you have children who are really reading well and you want to start introducing some simple language arts, simple grammar concepts, you could do something like first language lessons, where it's a very simple oral language lessons. But yeah, the Peaceful Press includes daily copy work, daily literature, weekly poetry, weekly art, geography, science. So everything's included except for in the elementary years, we don't include phonics, spelling, or grammar. There's a few more questions. I'm just going to scroll through. We have just a couple minutes left. So I appreciate you guys putting some question. Is there such a thing as too much free time? It sounds like they're doing great. Like, it sounds, Christy, like you read to them, you do play some games, but if they are playing really well on their own, and if you have, peaceful family, there's connection, I think that you would know if you needed to be playing with them more, if there was a lot of fighting. So in your family, if you notice that they are, I love this next question. If you notice that they're playing well, then they're fine. If you notice there's a lot of fighting, or closed bedrooms or deviant behavior, then I'd check on their play. But if they're playing well and their behavior, their virtue, like you see them growing in wisdom and virtue, then I think, as long as you're having those anchor points. For us, it was our morning time. We did our Bible time, reading the virtuous books together. And then we'd have a couple other anchor points in the day. Meal times are one of those anchor points. So if you have those anchor points in your day and there's a peaceful family life, then you don't necessarily need to be monitoring their free play. Like Jessica said, playing Legos or playing outside, that is useful. So in our family, our children had some chores they had to do, but often when they're playing Legos or they're playing outside, it is actually, that is the time they're processing what you read. Yeah, Mindy says it's called engineering, science, and PE. Absolutely. They're processing what you read. This is how Leonardo da Vinci became the great artist he was, is he had some free play and he was able to observe and make notes about his observations. So I think that we are actually doing our kids a big disservice in their future creativity by overscheduling and not giving them any time to develop their own interests. I'll take just one more question and then I'm going to actually pray for us. So Lakin says, what grades fit best for the precious people, the world history? Those are great ages for it. So it's not necessarily the best first grade resource because when you start studying world missions and ancient history, sometimes you get into like even the books like the Bronze Bow or the Golden Goblet. Those are great ancient history books, but some of them can even be a little bit serious for those youngest children. So these are such great questions. Thank you all for coming today. So, Kristen, do you want to go ahead and pick a random comment to win the one Inspired Homeschool book that I'm giving away? I'm giving away one Inspired Homeschool book, signed copy. Kristen's going to pick a random winner, and then you can email us at hello@thepeacefulpress.com to get your book sent to you. And then for the rest of you, the first 20 people to join the Restoration Home community, use that code restoration for 20% off your membership. The first 20 people, I'll send you a signed copy of the Restoration Home or the Inspired Homeschool book. Thank you so much for coming. We have so much more of this encouragement in the Restoration Home community. We have great mentor moms and coaches and a whole library of encouraging homeschooling and motherhood information. So the discount code for 20% off is restoration. So go to restorationhomecommunity.com and the code is restoration. And Kristen, we have Lauren Swingle is our winner. So congratulations, Lauren. You can email us at hello@thepeacefulpress.com to grab your free book. Such a joy to be with all of you today. The Lord bless you and keep you. God, I just thank you for your goodness and your mercy. Thank you that we get to have children that we raise for you, that children are a heritage from you, God. The fruit of our womb is a reward from you, Lord Jesus. And so I pray, God, that you bless us, give us wisdom and discernment as we raise these children for you. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Have a wonderful day, ladies. God bless you all. Hopefully we'll see you in the Restoration Home community.